Welcome to the SPL Rundown, your weekly look at all the SPL action. I'm your host, Apam, and this week I'm joined by Frost, Lermy Wormy, and we have a special guest, AlphaJackal, is here to talk about all of the Week 1 SPL games. Stick around a little bit later for my interview with the Camelot Kings jungler, Captain Twig. But first, let's talk about Week 1. I think we can maybe start with the Camelot Kings here, with the Kings versus the Titans. I think we all expected the ping diff to play a role. Kind of looks like it didn't play too much of a role. The Kings look good, and Scary looks like he needs some time to really work out this jungle role. What are you guys' sort of initial thoughts about Titans versus Kings?
Wasn't expecting a Kukulkan pick. I don't know. I don't know if the Titans were expecting it either. It's the classic combo. Go up with Nasha, come down into an instant line of death. You've done it with Rai, you've done it with Scylla, and now Kukulkan's joined the fray in sort of the pro scene to do it. Not gonna lie, I thought this was a very disappointing showing from the Titans. You have a look at their roster. Benji, Season 4 solo lane world champion, even has a skin after him. Paul, two-time world champion, who's just almost carried the last little PK. He could have two skins after him as well. Aurora and Cyclone Spin, part of that Splice team that won Season 5 Worlds. And they come up flat here. Like, really flat in this game. Like, they almost like they got caught off completely off guard here.
Yeah, I mean, that is just the super team curse, right? 7 world champions among this roster, 7. And, yet they couldn't seem to find one win here. And it's just kind of unfortunate, right? Because with Scary D going to this new role, everyone was kind of like, big question mark. Like, nobody knew what he was going to do. And I was honestly kind of surprised that he went for the picks that he did with Nem and Ao Kuang. Like, I feel like Ao Kuang is something you go for as a super seasoned, experienced jungler who knows what to expect from that. And he kind of just got kicked in the face a little bit, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, I suppose I was expecting something more lines of the Hunbats. Just one of those ones here. Okay, just stick around and farm in the jungle. When you got your ult, come talk to me, we'll do some things. But until then, just farm. Your job's easy. But no, the Ao Kuang, definitely a weird pick in their composition as well. They had 2 hunters, a Yamotra and a Guan Yu. They needed some control. They needed some more lockdown as part of that draft, just to allow the Hyman Xbalanque to do a bit more. And then they go for something which wants to dive the backline alongside the Guan Yu, which I didn't particularly like, because if that composition falls behind, it's almost impossible for the Ao Kuang to get back into the game, and that's exactly what happened.
Rob, your thoughts?
All right. So, at the beginning of the season, played with Scary, Paul, all of them, and what I've seen from then and now, as far as Scary D's growth is involved, is that he hadn't done much of it. Not since the start of then till now. And I think he's trying to find himself by trying to emulate high-level jungle picks and play styles instead of trying to form his own. Because I'm seeing his Fen build, that's sort of like a high-level ranked build. I'm seeing his Ao Kuang, that is just what you want to do when you want to frag and get to Grandmasters and ranked. And because he fell through, Paul was non-existent. Paul, we've known to play for that KDA. He plays it slow. And if he doesn't get pocketed, as we've seen other mid laners get here in the last few games, he's just not going to show up at all. So where you do get one new jungler kind of faltering here and there, it's more problematic for this team because it's so attached to the mid laner. If your jungle's not showing up, Paul's not going to show up either. And as you said, it did feel like the Titans were sort of, I don't know, hands tied behind their backs. While it doesn't look like any sort of major stomping that I'm seeing, I do feel like Titans just were not at full force.
Yeah, I remember watching a Zap stream this weekend. I think Zap was commentating on these SPL games, and he was like, why isn't Scary playing gods that he's played in solo lane, like Camazotz and things like that? Gods that he knows at least the mechanics of how to play them. I mean, I'm sure he's a great player and can pick up all these gods no matter what, but something that you're just comfortable playing at the highest level, regardless of role. I think a lot of people, even you, Frost, expected him to take after Cuvo, and we didn't really see that. The other thought that I had is it seems like Eye of the Jungle is just bad if you're behind. Like, you just don't get the fight in the jungle, and then what's the point of the item?
Yeah, the position where you buy it is very much, if it's not around the Fire Giant fights, it's useless because you buy it late. The Fire Giant already was taken, and now you're trying to defend your Phoenixes, and it's a jungle passive. It's just a horrible time there. I think they're just going to have to really, really push Scary. I think most of the roster is going to come down to Scary D.
Sure. We spent a lot of time talking about this Titans roster, but I do want to talk a little bit about the Kings here. Like you said, the Kukulkan into the Neja game 1. Something similar, I believe, Athena, Kukulkan, classic combos. Is this an easy way to sort of get the chemistry building up, because these are very, I don't want to say easy to execute, but very, known how the execution is for these combos. You hit the top, hit the alt. It's some simple. This is when you first start playing Arena, you're like, oh, we'll Ares ult into Poseidon and we'll kill all of them, right? It's sort of the same concept. Keep it simple for a team that's sort of a hodgepodge. Is that sort of what they're doing here?
That's kind of classic Twig. That's just been his career. The Poseidon jungles. He's had an Athena jungle in his repertoire. This isn't anything new for him, and it's almost like if you close your eyes in a very dim light, it's almost like he's back with Prime.
Yeah, I mean, you could say that, sure. Right? I do like the hand-holdy aspect of how Twig plays jungle. I think it works really well, especially with these teams where they haven't had that time to have that synergy form or whatever. And honestly, my biggest X factor here was how Netrioid was gonna do, and he did really well, right? For someone who was on a completely different environment. These are a bunch of EU people, and Netrioid's just thrown on this roster hey guys, I'm here now. But he really did stand up and do his own thing this set, and that was honestly really good to see.
Yeah. And for me, it just comes down to I'm gonna paraphrase one of the all-time great footballers, Johan Cruyff, who said, playing, and I was gonna say Smite instead of football. Playing Smite is simple. Playing simple Smite is incredibly difficult.
Sure.
The Camelot Kings they played simple Smite really well on that day, which is incredibly impressive, given that a lot of people had this roster sort of in the middle of the pack, given that it's, genetics come out in the SPL, didn't really have the best of showings for the small time that he was there last season. Big Man Tings stepping down, I would say, in terms of level to this roster. Captain Twig going back into the jungle, needing time to adjust. Netrioid coming into this new look environment. Harry coming in a solo lane for me, Variety, was going to be the one that solidified this team, and he did that. He was that anchor in that solo lane. Didn't need too much help. Didn't need too much support from Twig, and that's a huge boon to the roster because they could just focus on that mid fight.
I'm pretty sure Variety went deathless in this set. 3-0-5 in game 1 and 5-0-5 in game 2. So
yeah, literally by the skin of his teeth, 1 HP to his name, keeping him alive there from that outcalling execute.
Still counts. You know what? Harry will definitely say that was calculated, okay? Let's move on to the Leviathans versus the Olympus Bolts. Kind of feels like Sanguine sort of picked up right where they left off last year. Maybe a bit disappointing to lose to the Renegades, but they look really good. And Yarkor, as sort of a housewarming gift to the duo lane, gets to solo Bera. Is it just a case of maybe first game jitters from the Bolts? Maybe, being a little nervous? I know Haddix talked a little bit about that on Hazer's stream, so maybe it's just that. But, I think the Leviathans look pretty good. I know last week a lot of us had them thinking that, they would be in the top 3 for phase 1. What do you guys feel about the set and what we saw from the Leviathans and Bolts?
The Leviathans played pretty much how I expected them to play, with almost this calculated energy about them, and Julio looked really settled. Despite the fact he was on ping, he looked like he was just fitting right in as a seasoned solo lane in the SPL, let alone one that's just come in to the SPL as his first day's debut. He looked extremely comfortable. It is refreshing to see. In fact, I think pretty much every single rookie who had their debut or who had one of their first few games in the SPL this week, looked quite comfortable, and that bodes well for the future.
Lermy?
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. I think that Julio honestly just like really stepped it up, especially being on ping, being his first time in the SPL like ever. Like I was honestly kind of nervous how it was gonna be pulling Yarkor out of solo because Yarkor is such a talented solo laner, but I mean, if you watched European SCC at all in the past year, you'd know Julio is really to that caliber as well. And it's just really awesome to see both Yarkor and Julio step it up and work together like that, because that is just, it was really nice to watch in this game.
I think if you're a SPL solo laner, you're wanting Julio to stay over in Europe before he comes over to North America and then plays his tier, because that man will just look at you at the blue buff and then still get a kill. That's how good his tier is, I feel.
I do want to mention that Shinto also sort of popped off in both these games, doing a lot of damage, getting a lot of kills. I think we sort of expected that Shinto would be one of the top mid laners this year, but I think he looked really good, in my opinion. Frost, you want to give your take?
Yeah, I've got a bit of a mixed bags here for the Bolts. It's nothing to be ashamed of to get soloed or to be had by essentially a new team, right? Which is like that's kind of where the Leviathans are sitting with Yarkor coming into the ADC role. But it is Sanguine 2.0. You really didn't have to do much studying. Like in the history of veterans getting had by newbies, it's always, every esport has that set of them. But of all the teams that you shouldn't be getting got by, is definitely Leviathans. I actually almost called them Sanguine just because of like how similar they are still. And it's just sort of showing that the Bolts don't prep. They just don't go into it. Or maybe they do think every game in a vacuum. Right, this is just like a whole new team that we have to prep for, but it's not. You've got the foundation right here. One swap, and it's even the same player. Whereas Leviathans came in and they're like, this is what Lasper likes to play. This is what Ven likes to play. This is how they like to play, and then we're just going to do that. So it was very convincing that Leviathans know how the Bolts play. I don't know how that puts them against all the other teams, but I am very much convinced that if the Bolts don't get into their learning environment a little bit better, the Leviathans have the Bolts every time that they face them. Right? So in a vacuum, I can say that's the most convincing they're going to look. I don't know about the other teams. You know?
I think kind of the biggest issue that the Bolts had was that they like picked kind of strangely, especially in game 2. I like really was not a fan of the Chronos. I think that especially some of these teams that have picked more in the style of having that like solo agent is how they phrased it on the cast, kind of character. Chronos is kind of like that. They just don't do very well in this meta, especially in pro play. Like not having that burst mage follow-up, like even just in comparison to our last set, having the Kukulkan to just be there to burst down objectives, follow up on stuff. Chronos doesn't do that. Having like these solo agent characters, for lack of a better word, even despite, you know, Bumba's Hammer being an absolutely insane item, I think just like straight up will not work in this kind of environment.
It seems to come down to the team fights, right?
Yeah, I think Smite this season, it's how well do you 5v5? It doesn't matter. Well, it sort of does matter at the start you get off to, but teams will almost always find a way to get back into that 5 versus 5 stage. So you have to have clear comms, you have to have clear, concise goals in your team fight. You have to make sure the draft is synergistic with each other, not just the 3v3 or the dual lane. Every pick has to work together quite well. Otherwise, you're just not going to find that success, so you're going to find it more difficult to get it.
Yeah, as a final point to that, I think the average game length this week was around 30 minutes, which is what I feel significantly longer than it was last year.
Yeah.
So, for instance, it's like, in my eyes, it's okay to swap out your ADC for the Chronos, but if you're getting to 30 minutes with a Chronos mid, and you don't have any of that AoE damage or confirm or anything like that, then you're going to be in trouble, kind of regardless of how the game went.
Yeah.
It's 30 minutes, which is a bit longer than usual, but it's very, I'll say, there's big gaps in between the action. As before, a character would be strong depending on how they transition from early to mid into the late. Now it's sort of like early, how well do you do here? Then we stall, and even then, that doesn't do enough to transition you from early to mid. It's just like, do you do well now? Do you do well now? Do you do well now? Not how well can you sort of flow in through the stages of the game. And I think Ven tried to do that with a he just loves his auto attack based mid laners because they tend to outpressure regular mage mid laners, and he just goes, if I can get out of that early into that mid, Kronos is like, yep, I'm doing well here, and I'm doing well in late. And if you can get 2 out of 3 of those stages instead of depending on a solid flow, unfortunately they stopped him like dead in his tracks early, and that kind of sealed the deal for him.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts about the Leviathans versus the Bolts? I think we're gonna talk about this Bolts team again, but go ahead, Frost.
I almost died screaming when they were doing the Barra interview, and he was praising Haddix, and it's like, yeah, he's doing a lot of our shot calling, and I'm like, that is your solo laner, that is your newest member, Barra. I understand it shouldn't be you shot calling because you are the ADC. That's not the shot caller role, but you are very tenured, and you need someone that's not a side laner doing your shot calling. If maybe he's just singing the praises for him, but like the 3v3 in the mid, someone there needs to step up.
As a counterpoint to that, I don't mind it as much this season than it was in previous seasons, simply because with the addition of the Scorpions, it's a lot more risky for you to go for the Gold Fury side Scorpion, because then you could potentially lose the Gold Fury. Whilst going for the Pyromancer Scorpion seems to be like the way loads of teams go these days. So having your solo laner be an objective caller isn't as bad, because they can let you know, oh, we can do the Scorpion, then we can go do Pyromancer. We can start to build up a lead on this side to make the Gold Fury a bit more attractive to us. Rather than the previous seasons where it'd just be like, straight away, let's go do Gold Fury. We need the mid laner or need the ADC to call.
Mm-hmm.
But still, I agree with Frost's point regardless. we need Ven, or I worked with Ven. He is a phenomenal shot caller. He definitely should be the one on the team to be making the calls.
All right, let's move on to the Jade Dragons versus the Oni Warriors. I think this might be the first time we saw maybe a pretty drastically new start, if I recall correctly. I know the Camelot Kings did a bit of a different start, but it didn't seem super drastic. In this one, I believe Sam, he doesn't even start at his speed, right? He starts at red with the mid laner to try and, this is something we really hadn't seen too much. Can you talk a little bit about that start? I don't know if you guys have looked into it a lot at all, or what were your thoughts on that start? And then we have to talk about the Hannes, right?
Already wins Giannis. It's a tale as old as time. Players will think they can play against it, then they come up against it and go, oh god, this was a mistake, please never let me face this again. And apart from if you're Oni Warriors, in which case you go, now we can handle it in game number 2. I don't know. He did so much utility work and so much damage combined into one game, into one player, that it almost doesn't matter how well Panda Cat does. It doesn't matter how well Polar Bear Mike does. It doesn't matter how well Final K does. When you have the god of portals on your team popping off as he did, he will just find a way to bring you back into the game.
Did you have any hard data on the starts, AJ, or shall I do the spiel on that start?
I give you the floor.
Because I've figured that all the coaching and whatnot. No, but basically the start is jungler on the red, mid laner goes with the red into the mid lane. Jungler goes down to the little dinky back camp harpy. I don't know why it's there. It's just so no one touches that thing. Then goes and does their regular jungler route. Solo lane and the duo side start on their respective camps, and then they go into the waves. It may not be the best in terms of XP, gold, or timing, but it is one of the safer ones and can guarantee you more. As we were seeing in the SCC, people were doing the traditional start of ADC and mid laner on the red, and the support over on the other side, and the jungler and the solo laner on their speed buff. That makes it wonky when you get to the lane, and it really comes down to who has the best clear and who can get there in time for the blinking. Right now, you're minimizing as much RNG as possible. So even though it's not It may not be in terms of gold XP the best and most optimal splitting. It is safer when it comes to wave pressure because if you didn't clear right, you're just forced out at level 1.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I also think another another small thing like to consider is that doing the normal start the way like the meta is now leaves your speed and red coming up at the same time. So if there is one person that's not on time to that, you're going to be losing one of those buffs, usually the red. But if you just want to make sure that that is on time always, that is a really easy way to just kind of make sure that you can be there as the jungler every single time to the.
Yeah, and I was going to say the fact that it is there to, like, that start is there to maximize your wave pressure at level 1, because the dual lane will get into wave before the other dual lane does. Yes, they'll be level 1 still after the first wave, whilst the other dual lane will probably hit level 2 on 1, if not both of their gods. But that's fine, because you push them under their tower, you're going to get your minions quite quickly as well. You're going to hit level 2 very easily. And then the solo side, they're guaranteed all 6 minions from their wave, the soloing experience at blue buff. So they're going to be on par, if not ahead of the enemy solo laner. The only person that would fall a tiny bit behind to begin with would be the jungler, because he's not clearing as many camps to begin with, because he's having to solo back camps. But he doesn't care, because he's just going to have this pressure on the side lanes, which means all he has to do is get the mid laner ahead, and he's fine. All 3 lanes are ahead, he doesn't have to do anything.
Sure. Yeah, it seemed to me like that start was pretty effective at getting, like you said, that wave 1 pressure in the duo lane. And when you have, as consistent a solo laner as Fine-OK, you don't really have to mess with that lane too much, like you said. So, it seems like an easy way, especially if you're trying to play for pressure, to just start out with it sort of naturally.
Yeah.
I'm surprised it didn't do here's a funny one, is the support on the red. Everything's the traditional one except support goes to red. They help out the mid laner, then they go over to the purple. The ADC did everything on the purple, and you just walk into the lane. You get there before the minions, and the support and the ADC, I believe, hit level 2 on that first wave. It's one of my favorites, especially if the mid laner doesn't care for the red, because they're just like, mid camp pressure is not worth it, and you just put a really frag heavy support. Sure. I don't know if anybody does that though.
We do have to mention the Oni warriors in this game. We can't only talk about the Jade Dragons, but fortunately, they didn't look that great. I think we can blame some of that on the ping. I imagine Cuvo was playing with some pretty high ping, as well as Neil and Dardis himself as well. So, is that a reason why they maybe favored the Loki? Is that just an easier god to hit ultimate switch? You don't have to worry about aiming as much.
I think he's harder. Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna go for a low ping god, you're gonna go for Humbats, or you're gonna go for something like a Guan Yu or a Wukong, or even an Odin jungle. You're gonna go for something with a big AoE ultimate that, if you mistime it slightly, it's still gonna hit. It's still gonna do things. Rather than this very tiny AoE, you're gonna have to swivel your camera to get the stun off at just the right time. It is. Like, yes, he's got nice AoE ability in his agonizing visions. But it's not enough to cover the fact that they've got this ping. And I'd sort of half blame it on the ping. I'd also half blame it on the fact that Jade Dragons are just absolutely stacked as a roster.
You guys' thoughts on the Oni warriors at all?
I just think their comps are kind of whack, man. I mean, Bacchus did get buffed and all, but Bacchus is still Bacchus. He still has the same problems where he gets interrupted. He doesn't have very quick, impactful CC other than the belly bump, and even then, it's decent. You use your escape to get in, and then you have this channeled burp that lasts literally forever. So yeah, you just kind of are throwing it away at that point if you're not instantly killing them. So, I mean, I'm not a Bacchus hater. I think the Bacchus is a lot better than before, but I feel like in this context, especially when you've got people playing from ping, you can't really reliably, hope that stuff goes off. You kind of need something that is a lot more secure, a lot more instant, something that you just click it and it happens. Like, I don't know, Athena Tan is like an example, but she gets banned because she's absolutely insane right now. So, but a similar idea,
Yeah. I think for me, the whole point of them picking the Bacchus, it's in the first game especially, was just to try and stop PBM and just try and kill him as much as possible. Which, when you have a look at the he didn't die at all, kind of backfired. They had double Sunder on Bacchus and Guan Yu, two of the gods that could set up extremely well for this Sunder. And then you have the Loki, the Heimdall, and Poseidon just follow up on that. That should be The second somebody gets stunned or belly flopped on, should be instantly dead when they've sundered them. Didn't pan out.
Ross, any thoughts on the Oni Warriors?
I think it was an attempt to bully out Panda Cat, actually. And, he's been...
In Game 2 it worked. Game 2 they did, yeah.
Yeah. I think right now their meta, at least, is if you kill the ADC. If the fight goes on for, I'd say, 5 to 6 seconds after you trade out the ADC, you pretty much win it, so long as yours is still alive. But it's just, they couldn't make the room or they couldn't execute properly. I think right now, all the teams, except maybe Jade Dragons, should be trying to get more comfortable with each other before trying to perform on these really high level, high risk, high reward execution kind of games. But I mean, if you're gonna get the practice in, when's the better time to do it than now, when these games are high octane, high level, but they don't matter in the long run.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say any game is a throwaway or a sandbagging kind of game, but if you're gonna have them, might as well do them now.
This week, I had the pleasure of sitting down with the jungler for Camelot Kings, Captain Twig, to ask him about the new roster, the new map, Season 8, and to look back on his storied Smite career. Check it out. Hey guys, I'm here with the jungler for Camelot Kings, Captain Twig himself, to talk about the start of Season 8, the new roster, and then maybe delve into his long and storied Smite career. So I think we should probably start with this new roster. I know in our initial SPL Rundown episode, I kind of called it a hodgepodge because it seems like a lot of people who might not have really played together sort of on a team now. Can you talk a little bit about how this team came together during the roster apocalypse?
I think hodgepodge is a really good word to use. I'd say you could consider us leftovers, even though that has maybe negative connotations. I think Netroid realized really early that the Leviathans would go the way they are with Julio solo, and they put Jarkor over to Hunter. So he was on the lookout for a team really early, maybe earlier than I knew. That maybe I should move on from the Jade Dragons. Big Man and Biggie were kind of a duo that came from Radiance that didn't really want to play with those guys anymore on Radiance. And so they were a duo, and Biggie apparently talked to Netroid a lot, so they kind of banded together, and that was a little, like, two carries and a coach that were together. I had started to realize that my time had maybe come with the Jade Dragons. I don't think they were going to part ways with Sam, and I kind of understood that the best place for me was to jungle this year, not only because a couple junglers are leaving with Kenneth and Cherio, parting ways from the SPL. I did want to jungle this year too, for sure. Felt like it's my role. So I quickly came in contact with them because I thought Big Man Tings was the best mid laner from last year. He was just great. I've heard great things about him as a teammate, and honestly, they have come true, I'd say. So I'd say approached them, or I just got through talking with Biggie. And then because Biggie and Harry are friends from Dignitas days, and I'm also a friend of Harry's from back on Hungry for More Obey days in Season 3, that's 5 years ago. Harry was keen to come over to our team, and I think the last straw was Genetics, who was maybe, let's say, the up-and-comer, the little, like, potential pick, the how do we win worlds kind of guy. Well, I don't think it's from picking a safe, let's say, tier 3 support that's already in the SPL. I think that the best thing we can do is pick someone from the SML that shows lots of potential, that maybe had a lot of way to grow. And so we kind of all just came together, and I think it was pretty early on that we were kind of, I'd say the meme we made is 99% locked in to the team without really wanting to go anywhere else. And that's how we formed.
You've been around for all the seasons. Can you talk a little bit about some of the Season 8 changes that maybe made the game better in your mind? And were there any changes you think that made the game worse?
Sure. I'll start with the ones that made the game worse, because there aren't as many. The I think that the only changes that Hi-Rez made that I'd say made the game slightly more, let's say, unbalanced or sometimes frustrating
Mhm.
are the moments where is less counterplay options and kind of just random tankier characters or moments where you feel like you can't win fights. I think items is to do with that. I think removing thorns or making the thorns nerf made it really hard to play frontline against carries late game.
Sure.
It made crit really, really strong for hunters. There was an early on iteration where they were going Fail Not and Wind Demon with Berserkers. Now they're going just the full crit tree, Rage, Deathbringer, Wind Demon, and it's hard to beat. Like you can't. There's not much outplay potential for you if the ADC doesn't mess up. Usually they'll kind of own any 1v1 or even in a 1v2 scenario if they've got a little bit of help. And it's very frustrating. And earlier on in the game, I think it's very hard to kill a jungler with Ansile and Shifters. And so those item specific changes are maybe the key frustrations. Now, I think that's the worst part about Season 8. The other frustration is that jungles, I think, only have 2 viable starter items, whereas if you look at other roles, apart from maybe support, you can generally go pick between 5 or 6. ADCs have built Mannequins, Death's Toll, Bluestone, Leather Cowl, Gilded Arrow. They
Too,
have Eye of the Jungle they built. They can build almost all of these starters. It's insane, and they have solo laners have the same thing where they can maybe boots rush and go Bumbus later on. They can do the same thing where they can experiment. I'd say it's very limited in the jungle. You can go Bluestone, but it's terrible.
Yeah.
Like there's very limited starts for jungle, which it makes it less fun to experiment with different starts. But apart from that, it's actually, I'd say items aside, Season 8 was overwhelmingly positive changes. So I'll move on to that. The first change I'd say was awesome was the Scorpions, leading to enhanced buffs and blocking the objectives like Pyro and Gold to start. I think it's really good for the game. It stops 5-minute Gold Furies that would maybe snowball the game way too much. It allows objective plays that aren't just, we can't do Gold Fury, so why go there? Well, if 3 people back on one team, you can just do Scorpion. It's good gold, it's enhanced buffs, it's a small win, but it's not huge. I think Scorpion as an objective is a great mechanic. I think the doors leading out of your Titans is great. It leads to better sieges and like fun troll scenarios as well. I think that's a great map addition. I love the map being bigger. I think the jungle is in a really, really good spot where you get punished for doing bad ganks on opposite sides of the map. You get your jungle stolen, but at the same time, there's a lot of counterplay and kind of reward for being proactive on the map for it being this big. So I gotta say, the map, Season A, is probably the best the Conquest map has ever been, and props to Hi-Rez for that.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about why you decided to move back into the jungle, and then sort of maybe contrast it with how mid was for you last year? Sort of like 2 sides of the same coin, you know?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I was going to say that. The change to jungle for me was largely based on my year in mid. You can say I think I did improve a lot as a player that year. I started from, let's say, the bottom, let's say a 1 out of 10 mid laner, and I think I ended the year pretty strong. I'm not going to lie to you and say I was the best mid laner by the end of the year, but I had elements to my play that were better than anyone else. Like I did certain things, like say enabled the way my team played slightly better than other mid laners, but I wasn't in any dream world where I thought I was the best. And to be honest, I think being the best at a role comes from years and years of practice, which I had in the jungle. And I would have said I consider myself a top 2 jungler in Season 6. Ghost had a really, really good year, and I think I was a good part of it, as was the rest of the team. And I kind of felt a little bit frustrated that last year, Season 7, being a mid laner and watching junglers when I thought I would be better than a lot of them. And I kind of wanted to move there when I knew there were a lot of slots in the Jungle Open. I don't really want to win Worlds any differently than me being in the jungle, getting that championship as a jungler, which in my opinion is my best role in the role I was kind of supposed to be in.
Sure. It was my opinion in seasons 5 or season 6 and 7 that a lot of times individual SPL games especially would just come down to, one team fight where a team gets wiped or something like that. Do you feel like it's still sort of, you can wait it out and win a late game team fight to win a game? Is that always how Smite is going to be at the highest level, or are there other ways to ensure victory?
It's a great question, and it comes down to I think being a little bit more cynical, especially towards the middle of the pack to lower level teams. I think games can often look like that, whereas I'd say a team that has been dominant for years now is the Dragons now, the Ghost team. And games don't look like that so much for them, in my opinion, because they play every minute to make another move. If they do have a comp that has an advantage somewhere, they'll play off it and they'll look for fights there. And the games might not look so one team fight centric for them.
Sure.
And I'd say for other teams that have done well in the past, like Energy, are very aggressive early teams fights constantly and are very good at skirmishes. And I'd say a lot of the lower to middle of the pack teams kind of make mistakes by not being aggressive enough and letting things happen and just letting the game timer go up and up until eventually you just all have 6 items and there's one fight. And then a lot of the middle of the pack teams, they get a lot of their wins just from letting that happen. The game just goes by, and I would say it's a little bit of a mistake that can make a lot of the SPL games look maybe more boring than they should be by not doing anything and not pursuing constant fights and pressuring constant angles to be aggressive. And that's hopefully something the Kings can not to do this year, is just let everything stand off and then fight at 30 minutes and see what happens.
Sure. All right, I wanted to sort of shift our conversation a little bit to your long and storied Smite career. As per Cyclone's tweet this week, you are one of the only players to have been in the SPL for all of the seasons going back to season 1. So I just got to ask, did you expect to be playing Smite this long? 8 years? Was this in the cards from day one, or,
No, absolutely not. I think every year I kind of expected and played like it might be my last. There hasn't really been a single year where I'm certain that I will play another year. The high res do have been good about announcing that there'll be another year, that they want an esports team, and they have been and they have been promoting the SPL a lot. I maybe didn't realize until a few years in, maybe season 3, 4, how lucky I was maybe to get this opportunity to be a pro gamer and get paid to play video games. Like that even sounds just still crazy to me, that I should just be so grateful for the opportunity to do it, and to waste it, to walk away when maybe I haven't accomplished everything I want to do, I think is the reason why I've stuck around so long. And I don't regret playing Smite for a single year or a minute, basically, because I've just been so lucky. And basically every year I've considered it my last year, or what might be my last year. And I can't envision being luckier with something that I can just love so much for so many years.
Yeah. I've been asking this to sort of all of the players that I am able to interview. So I wanted to maybe get your thoughts, especially since you have such a long career, on, do you have sort of any rivals in the SPL or any mentors that helped you gain a footing in this league? So, go for either of those.
That's a good question. I would say for some reason, I don't know what Adapting would say if he was asked the same question, because I don't think he would consider me a huge rival, but I always considered him a huge rival.
Mhm.
I think maybe if I had to say he was my biggest rival I had through my years, he only started in season 2, 1 year later than I did, and he just left at season 7. And he wasn't even jungling against me in season 7, so it was less so a rival
Sure.
that year. But the seasons 2 to 6, I mean, we were both in EU, so we were going toe to toe a lot.
Mhm.
And he was always considered the GOAT or the best. And I personally felt like he was a huge rival. I had a very good head to head against him in season 4, 5 kind
Mhm.
of area, where I think there was more of a tank meta in season 4, and I definitely had the advantage of the meta behind me. But also my team play and myself as a player just became really good. And I would say the story that could be told is of Kenneth being the adapting being the player to beat, and me coming to the point where I could go toe to toe with him,
Mhm.
with whatever team I was on, with whatever team he was on, and I could beat him on game day. And I'd say he was my biggest rival that I maybe motivated me to be the player I am today. I'm not like I don't have his style,
Mhm.
but I respected his style always, and I always felt like he was maybe the biggest rival I ever had that I can really think of. Mentors, I would say definitely Nate and Prime, Ataraxia and Pretty Prime from Obey.
Yeah.
I learned so much from those guys over the 2.5 to 3 years I was on a team with them. They were the best teammates you could ever dream of. They were very helpful, nurturing teammates. They didn't make you feel bad for when you made a mistake, but they helped you and made suggestions, made you like twice the player that you were before being on a team with them. And so I'd say they were my mentors, if you like.
Mhm.
And adapting was definitely my biggest rival.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. That is all the questions I got for you, Twig. I want to give you a chance here to maybe rant or rave about the league. Call some people out. I'm always fishing for the drama here, so
Sure.
the floor is yours. Shout out whoever you need to shout out, call out whoever you need to call out. Go for it.
Okay, I'll start. I think the Jade Dragons have been at the top for too long. They are so conceited and trash. And this year, I really hope they don't Worlds. Even though I'm good friends with all of them, but screw them. The Leviathans, they play the same thing every game in scrims. I hate it. They do the same thing in scrims. They do the same thing in ranked. They do the same thing every SPL match. It's so boring. They just pick like 3 gods each. It's so annoying. It's so boring to play against. It's boring to watch as a fan. Get over yourselves. It's lame. I hope they don't do well either, even though I think those 2 teams are going to be the top 2 teams, the teams to beat this whole year.
Mhm.
But they should get over themselves. And shout out to all the guys on my team. I think we're going to be the team that has the most fun personally and outside of the game. And I'm extremely grateful for that, especially since I feel like there's a lot of potential in the game too. So, yep, shout out to those guys.
All right, man. Thanks a lot for joining me. Also, shout out buy the SPL merch. You got to get some Camelot Kings merch. That hoodie is looking real nice. I think I got myself a jersey, a Camelot Kings jersey. So
Let's
you
go!
also should purchase some SPL merch and support our favorite SPL players or your favorite SPL players or teams. I believe it is shop.smiteproleague.com, but don't quote me on that. Thanks again so much, Captain Twig, for joining me, and I wish you the best of luck in Season 8.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to the Olympus Bolts versus the Solar Scarabs. I think this was our first look at sort of what I'm generously calling the Box Boys team, with Layers and Baronic now on this Scarab squad. And their inexperience, SPL inexperience, kind of shows. I'm sure the Bolts were happy to get a game under their belt. They were able to focus maybe specifically on some things to help their play, but they just look much more cohesive as a team. Is this just a case of Scarabs need experience and this is how you get it?
When I have a look at all of the rosters, it's difficult to see which one is going to be at the bottom if they're all playing to their maximum potential. I think if you have a look at their lowest potential and have a look at their average potential, I would say Solar Scarabs are definitely down there as sort of like one of the lower end teams. So that is I don't mean that as like defensive way. It's just because they do have that inexperience. They haven't shown really that apart from Zapman, they haven't shown that pedigree to go on and play at the highest level consistently. It will take time for them to adjust. It will take time for them to adapt to each other. But getting some wins under their belt, getting some games under the belt, we're going to talk about that later. Spoilers. It's going to do them the world of good. It's going to help build that confidence and grow them faster. Because this first split isn't going to impact Worlds. It's not going to be that impact. It's all about just growing team cohesion. That's going to be perfect for this roster. It's just use this first half of the year to settle in, to grow the squad, to grow some strategies for themselves, find their identity, and in the second half of the season, make a run for it.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat as that. Like, I think that these couple of matches kind of are going to be really telling, at least for how much they grow, right? How much they're learning from what they're doing. So I feel like, you know, you make mistakes in scrims, you know, you think, okay, we're just trying something. You make mistakes in the SPL, it's a little more serious, right? It does have ramifications in the long run, you know, with the exception of this first split. So in my mind, if they take this just as seriously as if they were going to qualify for Worlds, if they were going to, you know, if literally this match was the one that was going to put them in Worlds, you know, that kind of thing. I think that they have a lot of room to grow for sure, but they're also very smart people. I think they are creative, which I really love to see in a team with a lot of new talent, I guess, because Layers has been, like, I guess, on the brink for a very long time, I feel like. But I think as a unit, they already have a ton of synergy, which is really awesome to see. And I just want to see them, you know, stretch a little bit more. I think, especially Boronic, I think, has some room to grow, but, you know, he's very classically known as an incredibly talented Xbox player, but can he show it at this level as well is kind of what I'm expecting coming forward, at least from these couple of games.
Frost?
And I think it helps that they've got. I think it helps that they've got one of the best minds in Smite, and they've got Slaney, two-time world finalist coach, to help them out alongside that theory crafting. It's going to help them improve massively very quickly.
Yeah, he's not afraid of yelling at them either.
No, he's not.
For me, in this one, I was actually really surprised. The Bolts did way better at controlling objectives as compared to their match against Leviathans, especially in this meta. I tell everybody, first to show up to the objectives is the equivalent of the high ground, Anakin. You set up, you're there where you want to be, and you put the wards where you need them to be. Every time Leviathans were showing up to objective fights, they were just like straggling, like, hey, I think somebody is there. You go check. No, you go check. Jake, go check. Okay. Here, it felt like the team was, all right, let's get ready for it. Let's get there. Okay, we're all set up, and let's go for those fights. It was still a little sloppy, but an improvement. You know, I was very proud of that for them. For the Solar Scarabs on their first showing, it's very strange seeing them on these picks because they are very team-oriented. We said Scary D had the issue of being on frag-oriented characters when he should have been on team-oriented characters. I feel like these guys should have been on fragging characters as opposed to a Geb, even though I'm very like tickled pink because of Inbound's build here. He went Compassion and upgraded Phantom. And people are like, what are you phantoming? The vines? No, you just wanted pure mitigations on that. And I really liked the thinking behind that. That was really cute. It didn't do much, but, you know, when he got slapped by a full Cuckoo ultimate, it was kind of hot.
I'm still waiting for the day when a team rocks out with 5 Compassions and just immortal to each other.
If only. I absolutely wish.
We've done that in casuals, and you legitimately just can't die. If you're all grouped up on the same target, it's impossible to kill you. That's how strong it is. No! Quickly run it, guys. Quickly
run it now before it's gone.
All right, let's move on to the next set of the week, which was the Jade Dragons versus the Camelot Kings. I think we sort of all expected the Jade Dragons maybe to win this, but I think the Kings really put up a great fight in game 2. And, you know, I call it one way or another. You know, there was a pretty good Hazer tweet about the genetics call. I don't know if you guys saw that. But, you know, it was just a little a little off, and I think that's fine for, you know, this early in the season, but getting to see the Kings, you know, fight back in a game when they were sort of so behind in the early and mid just looked really great for them. But of course, you know, Jade Dragons still win, and unfortunately everyone doesn't even play the Janus here. It was banned away, so...
Yeah, like can we
very
talk
smartly
about
banned
for a
away.
second that Herwin like actually looks good when he has a good team? Like how that's a thing. Because he looked really good this weekend, man. Even not even playing Giannis, he's playing Scylla. I mean, Scylla's a very good character as well, but like
Scylla's broken. She's broken.
he did super well.
He did do very well, yeah. I mean, I think we
Gotta help
knew
the boy
he could
out,
do
too.
that, right? Like we've seen him on that Dignitas roster from, was it season 5 or season 6? Season 6, right?
Whichever one, the first land,
Yeah.
the first one
That
that
was
went
a
to land.
that was a very, I would say, a relatively good team, like, you know, compared to the league at the time. Unfortunately, they weren't able to, you know, make it too far in the World Championships. But I think we've known that Furry can pilot scouts well on good teams and you know, make impactful plays. So I don't think that was a surprise. But I was more surprised by the Kings, you know, fighting into it, especially in Game 2. You know, Game 1, we can forget that for the Camelot Kings. But you know, Game 2.
Yeah, I think everyone wants to forget
Game
that.
2 looked really good, and I think there's a lot to work off of there. You know, like, even if you maybe made some wrong plays or wrong calls, you know, just the fact that it seemed like the communication was better in that game, it seemed like the commitment to calls was, you know, better, and I think all in all, you have to be feeling pretty good if you're Camelot Kings, especially with 2 of your players in Europe right now.
Oh yeah, future definitely looks bright for the Camelot Kings, and it showed that the Dragons, the team that everyone thought was just gonna like pretty much almost sweep the league because of how strong their roster was. It showed that they are capable of being beaten. It showed that they are mortal like the rest of us. It showed that they are, you know, susceptible to mistakes and fall and getting their lead taken away from them. If it wasn't for the ping, I honestly thought this goes to a game 3. With the way Kings played in game number 2, it was just that close. And well, I think this is one set that Twig's going to want to forget very quickly. Wasn't really able to get into the game at all, even for 48 minutes. But
The second one was personal, though.
it was personal. Just completely ignored everybody else. Get Twig, no one else.
Oh yeah, that was nasty. It was what is it? You got Sam for Soccer going on variety, but in the midst of that, you have PBM Hercules ones up to Twig. He knows Twig's gonna jump, blinks to catch his 2, and then eats his beads. Oh my, that looked personal. And then it was literally like a 15-second chase down the lane just to jump on Twig.
Sure. I mean, you know, you only get a
monkey
few
scary.
times to, you know, beat up your former teammates, right? So.
Exactly.
Saying monkey's scary, you got to keep the monkey down.
Sure. Let's talk.
To me, though,
Frost, yeah.
just my final feeling on these is, it feels like that 2-1, if I'm trolling culture, is still there. What's a bit more exciting from all this is maybe they can still kind of put that aside, number 1. And number 2, they're capable now of punching back, right? The worst thing into the Knights was they got counterpunched. They were not expecting any plays of desperation whatsoever. Now it feels like they've got a bit better of a head on their shoulders. So I don't know if that humbled them, or if they really are so gassed up right now that they feel and truly believe that they are the best team in the league currently, to the point of paying the other teams their respects of, like, the obvious play is to go for a Phoenix, stick around, and then go for the Titan, because they were waiting on that play. But I feel like they're still troll as all hell, especially with Sam inting kind of like in the mid to the late. In this meta, you throw the lead mid, you're stuck there for another 15 minutes or so. And in the end, I think he got some very valuable information because he learned how to solo a solo laner. You know, with a Fenrir.
The impossible.
That's always been like their hardest matchup, especially on Phoenix fights. But now it's just, okay, that's information that's going to carry him for the rest of the league.
All right, let's move to the last game of the week, of week 1, season 8, SPL. We have the Valhalla Valkyries versus the Solar Scarabs. Finally, we get a 3-game set. And in the end, the Solar Scarabs do take the win. I think this is maybe the clearest ping diff, right, that we could see. But I think, very good team fights from the Valkyries in game 1. Really sort of maybe caught Solar Scarabs off guard, but Layers comes into play in game 2 and 3, and I think Baronic actually sort of has redeemed some of his Janus picks with his game 2 and game 3 plays. I want to say that the Valkyries are going to be better on low ping, but I don't know. There are still a lot of questions here. How good is Zero's going to be coming back in the SPL? Is there going to be chemistry issues between Ducky and Johnny and these people? It all remains to be seen because they're all still in Europe, unfortunately. What are you guys' thoughts on this? You think the Scarabs should have expected to win this game, or is it closer than we're talking here?
We're talking about like ping aside, because like 700 ping is.
I think we have to talk about ping because, I mean, it did happen, and it's a real thing that exists, right? Yeah, Zero's having 700 ping is unfortunate to say the least.
I don't think I've ever played on that much ping. Jesus.
It is it is pain.
I think my
literally
smite
agony.
I think my smite just dies at 500. I can't imagine 700.
I remember back when I was living in the Middle East and I was playing on European servers on Call of Duty, 200 ping. It was a nightmare to try and do that. So to see triple that and then some, I think I would have legitimately smashed my PS4 at that point. It would have just, or PS3, whatever else playing. I was like, no, this is not worth it. I'm doing something else. I'm going back to Minecraft or something. I don't know.
Sure.
I think, ping aside, I was really impressed, I think, by the Valkyries showing up this game, and they did have a really, really solid game 1. That was pretty, as close to on point as can be considering ping and all that, but, I think they did get a little tilterino by the ping. That definitely is probably something that happened. It's definitely probably, but yeah. Knowing these players and knowing how that can affect them, I think it probably would just kind of ruin comms when you show up and you're like, I have 700 ping. I don't want to be here anymore, man. Like that's probably not what they said. I don't want to like imply that they had like a quitter mentality or anything, because they didn't, and they did really bring these games as far as they possibly could go considering the situation. So. It is what it is. I think on a game with even ping, it would have been an even better situation there for both teams, honestly, for them to show up on even playing fields. But I don't know, man. I was so excited for that Tiamat, and then for Zeros to be like, yeah, I have 700 ping. I don't know. I feel like Tiamat is still absolutely broken, deserved of that 100% pick ban. But presuming that you have reasonable ping, different story.
Sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Took a whole Phoenix on its own, didn't it?
Yeah, like literally just one wave of giblets is what the community have been calling it. It's just been giblets.
The Lizzies.
They're the giblets.
Yeah. Well.
It was a full team fight, bottom left, and they trade Phoenix. Right, Phoenix. No other god could trade Phoenixes in that sort of situation.
I am in my base. I still get your Phoenix. Checkmate.
Yeah, do you really need less than 700 ping to press 4-1?
I want to maybe mention Layers a little bit. I feel like he sort of popped off in games 2 and 3, 9-1, and I think game 3 he didn't die. He goes 5-0 on the Ravana.
Yeah, 5-0. Yeah.
I mean, he was just making plays, getting the kills, doing everything his team needed to. I think game 3 especially looked very sort of clean as it can look from the Solar Scarabs at this point, I would say. You guys think Layers is? I think a lot of people maybe have him sort of at the bottom of their jungler tier list. You think he's gonna be able to climb the ranks, and do you see him being one of the better junglers in this league?
Layers isn't at the bottom of my individual jungler tier list, but as far as how well they can play with other people, that's yet to be decided.
Sure.
I've not really seen him at this sort of high level. He's always been known to just be very much a carry. Because season 1, yeah, sure, he could give Vandenster a run for his money, but when you need the jungler working alongside your team, that's a different story.
Yeah.
For me, it comes down to whether Les learns how to play and help his team from behind. When Les is ahead, he's probably one of the most frightening junglers to come against because he will run games through and through. That's what he's been doing in the SEC. That's what he's been doing in the console scene for years. He's just been getting ahead, running games, and making you hate your life for even thinking to play against him. But when he's behind, it almost looks like he's a bit lost on how to get back into the game and help his team get back into the game. If he brings that element to his game and to his team's game, Solar Scavs become a lot different to face up against, become a lot more difficult of opponent to break down, and then Les shoots up into one of the top junglers in the league, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think people like to talk a lot about how Layers has grown over the years, because in the past, he's been known to be like a little bit of a baby rager, but it's all in the past at this point. It's console, They all had screaming parties with each other during the land, and that's just how it was. You yell at each other, you get yourself hyped up, and you play the game. But over the years, Layers has become a lot more disciplined. He has slowly been teaching himself like how to play in this team environment, and like you still see the moments of brilliance, like when he does get ahead. When he and Baronic are playing together, they are just inseparable. They are insurmountable. They are amazing together. But it's just all about learning to be disciplined even beyond those situations. Like you guys said, when they get behind, how do they deal with getting behind, that kind of thing. And that's something you just learn over time. This is a new environment for them. They've never been this high before, which is both exciting and frightening in a way for them, because I'm super excited to see what they do, but at the same time, it's going to be a lot of learning really, really quickly, and it's all about how fast can they pick it up, and then where do they go from there, right? Because they have all this potential, but they need to be consistent about it, because in my eyes, Layers is an incredibly talented jungler, but he's very, very, very feast or famine. And it's all about finding that like middle point where you can do that, but you need to be a little bit more consistent about it.
Time for us to make our week 2 SPL picks. We'll go through all of the sets in, I guess, chronological order, I guess is what you will call them. So first, let's start off with the Leviathans versus the Tartarus Titans here. I think we'll start with you, Frost. Who you got in this one?
Leviathans versus Titans. Okay. The assumption of how well will they do after 1 week of play, because I don't think the Leviathans are going to go any further than where they currently are. So the question is, do the Titans catch up? Any of them on drastic ping?
No, all of them should be in NA. Well, Cherio's going to be on ping, but he's a coach, so it doesn't
I
matter.
believe all of them are in Alpharetta right now as well.
All of them in Alpharetta. So I'm mostly putting it up to the Scary step it up, make room for Paul, especially into this team, and they play very emotionally. I think this will be 2-1 for the Leviathans, but the Titans will start showing signs of life. So that's my final on that one.
All right, AJ, how about you?
I think it's also going to be a 2-1, but I am taking the Titans on this one.
All right. Lermy, who you got in this one? Leviathans versus Titans.
I'm gonna go 2-0 Leviathans, and I say that mostly because I just did not feel very much energy coming out of the Titans in this first set that they had this past week. And I don't know kind of what their scrims look like, if they really just came out thinking that they had this chance to experiment or something, and they have like something safer in the pocket. Like in that case, like I'm feeling better about it, but I don't know, man. This past week was kind of spooky. You didn't really see a lot of the same energy that we saw from those individuals last year. They kind of just came together as a super team, and they are, facing the super team curse at this point.
Sure. Yeah, I think I'm probably going to take the Leviathans 2-1 as well. I think it just takes more time to get team cohesion than a week or two, and especially with a new person in the jungle role, I think it might take even longer. And, I think they're willing to take, phase 1 just to figure it all out. So I think Leviathans are going to take it 2-1. AJ, let's start with you on the next one. Oni Warriors versus Valhalla Valkyries. Again, our EU team is playing from EU, unfortunately, but I think the Oni Warriors have some ping issues as well. What's your take on this matchup?
I think 3 people on the Oni Warriors are going to have ping issues. So 3 versus 5, or you're looking at 2 versus 0 if you're looking at a non-ping side of things. So I think Valks can still take a game off the Oni Warriors, but to take 2 on their ping is going to be very difficult. So I'm going to go 2-1 Oni Warriors.
All right, Lermy, how about you? Oni Warriors versus Valhalla Valkyries.
I'm thinking the same score. I'm thinking 2-1 Oni. But I do think that with it not being like the premiere or whatever, I think Johnny will be more comfortable to go back into those like classic like hyper carry things. I feel like that is kind of where we saw him shine the most, So maybe even despite the ping, those kind of characters can be kind of hard to play at that point. But I mean, he played the Loki very, very well considering. So if he goes to something similar like that or just has another outstanding performance, I think that the Valkyries can easily take a game. And I'm kind of expecting that to happen.
All right, you have Onis 2-1.
Mm-hmm.
Frost? Onis versus Valkyries?
Yeah, 2-0. It's going to be Oni. As much as it pains me, I've essentially just kind of discounted Valhalla until they get their situation figured out, because you have to be some kind of god to operate on 700 ping.
I don't think
consistently enough.
700 ping like all the time, consistently.
It's not. Yeah, I think that's just
that kind of
one
makes it
game.
even worse though, because if it's 700, it's like, all right, that's how much I gotta predict vibe it. It's just if it's constantly fluctuating. But no, just those, especially if you want legendary Raffer play, which is unless he decides to not play it risky at all and just sit on like a Kepri. Actually, even then, he was like just throwing them out there very early, because I imagine he was spamming it like, I'm just trying to make sure it goes out there instead of nothing happening. So we've seen him on safe picks. We've seen him on more gods to take initiative. I think he's just kind of out until he gets here.
Sure. All right, Lermy, let's start with you on the Oni Warriors versus the Solar Scarabs. Who you got in this one? Oh, I forgot to give my pick.
I'm actually going to say... Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I think probably going to be Onis 2-0 versus the Valkyries. I don't know. I think Neil's going to have a good game. That's my prediction. All right. Sorry about that, Lermy. Let's go with you for Oni Warriors versus Solar Scarabs.
I'm going to say 2-1 Scarabs here. I think that ping diff will come into play. And I think this week is going to be the week that really determines like if Scarabs are out to play. And I have all the faith in the world in them. They are my homies. We love Layers and the boys, and I think they can do it. They can bring home another victory.
Okay, sounds good. Lermy's got the Scarabs winning. Frost, got the Scarabs winning, or who you got?
Yeah, 2-1 Scarabs. I think this is going to be just all pure energy from Zap. You want to beat the old teammates, and I don't know if anyone would ever want it more than Zap.
True.
AJ, how about you?
Well, it looks like I'm going to be disagreeing with everybody here. I'm going to go 2-1 with the Warriors. Gotta support the EU brethren. Gotta support the EU contingent here. Yeah.
My biggest thing is Neil going to be able to stop some of these EU boys from tilting? And if he can hold them back, I think the Oni Warriors got a chance. But you guys have given me confidence to go with my boy Zap here. I didn't even make the pick until now, but now I'm going Solar Scarabs 2-1. Let's go.
I'm the odd one out in this panel right now. I really am. I went with Titans. I'm now going with the Oni Warriors over the Solar Scarabs. I'm going to disagree with most of you guys, but I think this next game is going to be something different. I think we're all agreeing next game.
Let's start with Frost here, our resident Jade Dragons fanboy. Carter's Titans versus Jade Dragons. Is it a 2-0 for the Jamberry boys?
I feel they're going to be undefeated going into the playoffs, and with each game that goes through, I know PBM's going to drive that into the culture of like, we cannot drop a game, even though trolling is also in their culture. I think they're still going to take 2-0 against the Titans there.
AJ, how about you?
2-0 Jade Dragons. It's no contest, I don't think, for most of the teams. Yeah, Jade Dragons just going to run through and win it all.
Sure. Lermy, Titans versus Dragons.
I think it's gonna be let's go to 2-0. Yeah, Jade Dragons. They are that good. I think they have subtly proved it this past week, and considering how the Titans played last week, it's not that I don't have faith that they will do better, but it's just that the Dragons are that good, man.
Yeah. Well, and they don't have to deal with like role changes or anything like that. Everyone's playing the role that they want. I think if they ban Yanis, it's going to be 2-1 to Jade Dragons. And if Yanis gets through even one game, it'll be 2-0. So the Dragons are going to take it either way.
Okay, we got to start putting up Giannis
Giannis
predictions.
predictions.
Who feels like they're going to ban it and who doesn't?
All right.
What game does Harrowin play Yanis in this week?
All right, AJ, let's stick with you here on the Bolts versus the Valhalla Valkyries. Again, unfortunate ping situation. What's your take here?
Oh, this is probably the one I've struggled with the most to try and predict. Because I really do want to say the Valks. But with how unreliable it's going to be for their ping, I just simply can't say it. 2-1 Bolts.
All right, Lermy, who you got here? Olympus Bolts or Valhalla Valkyries?
I'm in the same boat as AJ. I have to say 2-1 Bolts just because of the ping diff, but I think that this will be significantly closer than the Oni Valk matchup earlier in the week. This will be a possibility for the Valks to take it, but I just can't with confidence say that they can do it considering the situation.
Sure. Frost, who you got here? Bolts versus Valkyries.
2-0 Bolt. I thought they were going to take anybody on underwater servers. It would be the Scarabs, but seeing as that did not happen, they did take the one. But I think if the Bolts were to come in for their first matches with the Valhalla Valkyries was on like the first day, sure they would have been fine there because it catches everyone by surprise. But the Bolts now can plainly see the effect of all that ping on them. So just 2-0 Bolts.
All right, Lermy, finish this out here. We got Leviathans versus the Camelot Kings. Who you got in this one?
I think I'm actually going to say the Leviathans here. I'm going to say 2-1 Leviathans, mostly because I think that, they like to play a very safe game. And the Camelot Kings, we talked about it before, they like to play simple Smite. If you are the Leviathans, you are standing as far away as possible for them, waiting for us to get to late game so it can be just even team fight central. And so, in my eyes, ping differences aside, I think that the Leviathans just have the better playstyle matchup in this situation, but it'll be close. So I think 2-1 Leviathans.
Frost, how about you? Leviathans versus Kings.
I've got Kings 2-0 because this to me is sort of like there's always that one team that subscribes very well to old EU style metas. And I don't think Sanguine does well into those at all. This is who was it last year? I kept saying SSG was like Sanguine Prime. I think that was the Raffer team then. Yeah. Camelot Kings is Leviathan's Prime.
All right.
So that's 2-0.
Kings.
Yeah, I didn't say that.
AJ, round us out here. Leviathans versus Kings.
I think everyone's overlooking Camelot King's secret weapon. They have one of the Leviathans on their side. They got Netrioid there. They have the insider information. They know everything they want to do. Camelot Kings 2-1 for me.
All right. So that wraps it up for week 2 of the SPL. I just sort of want to... Sorry, AJ?
What was your prediction for the final game?
I think I'm going to go with the Kings. I just like the way that they've been playing. They just sort of feel like everything's going right for them, even though they lost one of the sets. I don't know. It just feels right. Maybe because I talked to Twig this week, I'm up on the Kings. So let's say Kings 2-1. Thanks for watching the SPL Rundown this week. Be sure to catch us every week on Thursdays after SCC on twitch.tv/SmiteGame. And if you want to see extended cuts or past episodes, be sure to check out our YouTube page. Also, if you have any future guests, feel free to DM me on Twitter at Apam2 or at Apam Productions. And like always, be sure to like and subscribe. And we'll see you guys next week. We'll cover week 2 of the SPL and make our picks for week 3. I want to give a chance for my guests here to shout out their socials. We love having the community members on. So why don't we start with you, Frost?
I am the other Frost on the Twitters, the YouTubes, and the Twitch is very consistent, very nice. Go on any of those if you happen to be on those platforms.
AJ, how about you?
I'm the exact same. I'm not the other Frost, though. I'm AlphaJackal across all 3 platforms as well.
All right, go ahead and shout yourself out.
All right, I am Lermy Wormy on Twitter, and then on Twitch, I am Lermy Wormy with 2 Y's at the end. So make sure to put that extra Y on there. I definitely didn't forget my password or anything, and didn't have to make a whole other account. That wasn't me.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys. And we'll see you guys next week on the SPL Rundown.